Hello and welcome to MontrealGazette.com and welcome to this week's edition of Drawing Conclusions. My name is James Mennie and the man across from me with his dog is the Gazette's Terry Mosher, also known as Aislin. The dog's name is Sparky and we want to thank him for coming back. I'm glad you joined us again.
This happens from time to time. I'm dog sitting. My wife is in Ottawa. So.
There you go. So, and it's always a pleasure to have you here. That said, you were being warm and fuzzy with your young friend, but the week seems to have begun on something of a cranky note. And you don't do cranky that often. You can do angry, you can do impudent. But this week we had an example of somebody lashing out at texting while driving. And normally, in my experience, and most people I know, when we talk about texting while driving, we complain about it, it's because we nearly got clipped by a car driven by somebody who was texting while driving. Now, what's the backstory on your cartoon?
Well, there was actually a news item in the paper on Monday about how this is clearly a danger. It's a lot more complicated than that, but there's no question about it. People texting whatever it is with a handheld device are a clear danger on the road. And the last few weeks I've just happened to see a number of situations, one where somebody had two devices, and I realized it irritates me and makes me very nervous when I drive, when I see this sort of thing. So I thought it's time for a cartoon, and then it's the question too with that cartoon of presentation. How do you get the sign on the back, idiot on board as opposed to baby on board, to show at the same time while somebody's texting? So you break it down almost like a comic strip, Jim, a sort of a visual comic strip, into 1, 2, 3 segments, and you make the person's eye revolve a certain way when they get to the final point.
Anyone who's watched this show,
thought that goes
I know,
into these
but
cartoons.
I was about to say, anybody who's been watching these webcasts knows that there's a thought process that goes in. There's a very there are mechanics, not mechanical, but there are mechanics to what you do. And I'd love to know, why did you decide to put a woman behind the wheel of that car?
Well, I'll tell you, I thought about that, and I thought, okay, you know, you're always doing generic people in befuddled situations, or doing something puzzling, or even stupid, or even almost illegal, and you try to break it down a little bit, not only in terms of gender, but also in terms of race and that sort of thing, and make it sort of appear that you're not favoring just laughing at white, dumb males. And in this particular case, I thought, there's clearly a problem with women, because I've seen men do it too, but I see an awful lot of young women with handheld devices when they're driving. And I thought, okay, I'm going to make it a woman. And inevitably there'll be a few complaints, but we have to sort of even these things out. The next time I probably...
Excuse me, were there some complaints? Did you get complaints?
I think there was a couple of just queries about why did you make it a woman, just like you did. And I think I explained it fairly well. Also, women... Perhaps I tend to do men in sinister situations more often because men are more sinister.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew this or not, but the only crime where women lead over men is shoplifting. All others, men take the prize. Yeah.
That's because we don't have that hand-eye coordination when it comes to hockey, perhaps, but not shoplifting. It's interesting though, because we're talking about men and women, and making a point. You used a bumper sticker to make a point.
Yeah.
There are some people who say there are cartoonists out there who like to make their point by hitting people over the head with a building. And you have made your point on several occasions, and one cartoon this week, and in cartoons in the past, by using buildings. And this week you decided to take a look at the, how can I put it, the very rare chorus of the big three service providers for cell phone service in Canada, depicting these skyscrapers, these very moneyed, powerful looking skyscrapers.
Deliberately, yeah.
Deliberately.
And sort of high-rise, threatening, they run things upstairs and we have no access to this. There's that suggestion immediately in the cartoon. The three towers sort of, by the way, it's from a photo I took in Hong Kong. Well, it doesn't matter, just for
But here's the thing, how big a roll of the dice is it when you don't have some? One of the things I learned in terms of writing, and I try to do that over the years at the Gazette. Whenever I read once, if you want to write something, if you want to depict a scene, make sure there's a person in it. How tough is it for you, or how big a gamble is it if you're doing something that has no humanity at all, it's just those buildings?
Not if it's highly symbolic. For example, if in that particular case it worked because it suggested power, 3 towering buildings. Probably the building I've drawn the most often in my career has been the House of Commons in Ottawa. And we see that as in different ways. Sometimes we see it as a church, and most Canadians haven't visited it, by the way. And so people immediately recognize it as a symbol for Ottawa, for power there, and going on. And often you can make a point by drawing the House of Commons from one angle or another, and have a balloon coming out and somebody commenting on the activities of the day, and it works quite well. It's quite effective. Here locally, there's another example of that this week. Probably we have many wonderful buildings in Montreal that we associate with different things, churches and hockey arenas and that sort of thing. But probably the building that collects the most attention would be the Olympic Stadium, and it has right from the beginning. It's been very controversial.
But it's an icon on so many levels, because it literally is. It's a part of the skyline. It's you know, as much a part of Montreal as old Montreal or any other sort of actual veritable architectural icon. And yet it has also become a lightning rod for all kinds of controversy.
Well, it's looked upon with so much disdain,
well, yeah,
Jim. I mean, because, you know, I can remember witnessing cement falling in the late 70s at a baseball game. I actually saw something drop out of and I realized at that time, my God, there's a problem here.
But it wasn't until 1980 that there was an official kind of acknowledgement that there is a problem there.
There was clearly in 1980, there was a study was done, and it was found to be unsound. The structure was unsound, so that began a series of cartoons. I think we're going to show a few here where I used the Olympic Stadium, suggesting it could be any number of things. The Syrian embassy, since we want to get rid of them both.
Yes.
Another was Quebec City is begging for an arena. Ship them the Olympic Stadium. So I could probably do a book of cartoons where we've suggested what should be done with the Olympic Stadium. But at core is, how do we get rid of this thing, or how do we resolve it?
Your cartoon in 1980, the one that depicts somebody, after the report comes out, you've got somebody on a street, a side street, as the Olympic Stadium is heaving up Titanic-like. You've got somebody on the street offering great tickets to
behind home plate,
behind home plate to an Expos game. And I've been wanting to talk to you about this cartoon. It's one of the few cartoons I've seen actually that predate my arrival at the Gazette. Not by that much, but one thing you do, and I don't want you to, if I'm about to insult you, I apologize in advance, but I can't think of a better word. For all the opinions you have, for all the impertinence that you exhibit, you do it in a very meticulous, almost draftsman-like manner. Mm-hmm. You love straight lines. You love drawing straight lines. It shows in that facade on those houses on the street. The big O, no matter how much derision you heap on the big O, it's always drawn impeccably. There's no wobbliness to it at all. Was that just the training? Is that part of your style? Is that a trick? Is that a?
I think we all sort of develop techniques and styles. I'm proud to say that I have a bunch of them. And I like to surprise people. I might do a photo montage one day, a strict drawing, and a caricature the other. I guess because when I went to art school, I was a young lad, crazy about drawing in so many different ways, and I happened to pick it up. And fortunately, I got into a profession where I could exhibit this ability. The key, though, became to start making them funny.
Yeah.
I remember my first major editor was a guy by the name of Frank Walker at the Montreal Star. And he took me aside once and he said, "You know, Terry, you're a great, great caricaturist, but just kind of a passable cartoonist." Wow.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that lit a fire under me. I said, "Oh, yeah?"
Yeah.
And from that point on, I began emphasizing less on caricature. I knew I could do it, and I could suggest who it is, and studying more how different cartoonists delivered cartoons and how they made them funny. Because humor is a huge part of this, whether it's sardonic or just gentle, whatever it happens to be. That is the art, to make the thing funny. I mean, I suppose I could be an architect in terms of drawing stuff, this, that, and the other. But that ability that, say, Chapleau has, or Brian Gable of the Globe and Mail, to take a situation and make it funny, that's the magic.
Yeah. You mentioned you have more than one style. In this week's collection of cartoons as well, there's and there probably is a better word, there's a rather haunting cartoon depicting, I think, a homeless person sitting down outside of, I think it's 24 Sussex. But what strikes me about it is there's almost a kind of a watercolor effect to it, the use of color in it, which is not, and as I said earlier, you're in my experience anyway, you tend to be very, very linear and very sort of, but this is almost as a very soft, a softer side.
That's a very good idea. You know, a very good eye on your part. You know why, Jim? I actually drew that outside of the Parliament building.
Yeah.
There was a guy sitting there, and I thought, my God, what a contrast this is. A guy, obviously this was his spot. We know these panhandlers, they have their spots, and there's sometimes dogs and things anywhere. This guy clearly had a spot right in front of the government buildings of Canada. Right across from the PMO, I might add, too.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
And the other thing I found remarkable about that cartoon was that he's not big. He's by no means the dominant figure or the dominant thing that'll. But you don't spend any time looking for him. The eye is drawn right to him.
Well, if you look at it again, you'll see that all of the lines in the drawing, the key lines, the important lines of the fence and the buildings, point at him. There you go.
Enough of technique. I want to talk about metaphysics now. I want to ratchet it up a bit because your pipeline cartoon this week.
It was a puzzle.
Well, I looked at it and I said, well, on the one hand, it can be taken very sort of like in a flip manner. Mm-hmm. And the other, I'm wondering if Terry's basically saying, you know how you could, you could no more do without oil than you could your morning coffee.
That's an element in it. I was curious. Sometimes you puzzle over how to draw something without being predictable. Sure, I could have drawn the pipeline as a threat or something, or with some sort of a demonic symbol on it or something like that. But the idea was to make it point out, they were emphasizing trying to sell this as being a sort of a Canadian activity, a nation builder. And I thought, well, there's other stuff we need as a nation, like double coffees and a little bit of beer. Now here's the interesting thing. This is our new method of reader participation. I put it up on Facebook and people immediately began sending me suggestions for other pipelines. Like poutine gravy and a bit of BC Bud if you could liquefy it. So, but why not next week maybe redo the cartoon with all of the reader suggestions stuck in, like new pipes and so on. I'm really enjoying that reader participation, and this is part of it. Yeah.
And one thing I want to ask you, though, because I tripped over a story this morning that's going big time today. Do you intend to have any fun with John Baird's business cards, his unilingual English business cards that Graham Fraser, former columnist here at the Montreal Gazette, actually, Graham Fraser says, no, that's not good enough. You've got to have bilingual. And in fact, the story we ran at MontrealGazette.com this morning actually depicts the invoice or the order form, showing what he wanted scratched out and what he wanted put it on. I'm thinking, my God, if Terry gets his hands on this.
Well, if the story holds until the beginning of next week, by all means, I'll do it. And of course, how I would approach it would be, what are some well-known business cards? Have gun will travel or something, or just start to play with concepts like that. That's probably how I do it. But you don't know. A weekend is a long time in the news business, as you know, Jim.
As we know, things can change in a weekend.
Could happen very quickly. Yeah. So it goes on the list. But whether it ever sees the light of day or not is another thing.
Well, we'll have to wait until next week to find out what exactly happened, because we're plumb out of time. I want to thank you so much. Always a pleasure talking to you, Terry.
It's
always
good to
a pleasure being here with Sparky, the best behaved dog in the universe. I want to thank everybody out there who took the time to listen. Stay with us at MontrealGazette.com and have yourselves a great weekend.